Perfect. Good day, everyone, and thanks for joining today's session. We're going to be talking about the release control and ChangeMan ZMF technology in action. And what we're actually going to demonstrate is the solution working really in a fully integrated manner. So going from the creation of change packages via a distributed route through into the transition of change packages, the approval process, and finally out into the real world of release and deployment. As everyone's aware, the demand for delivery of software has increased tremendously over the last 10 or 15 years. Agile transformation has meant that software is able to be delivered more rapidly, and business transformation, specifically digital transformation, has meant that organizations are now putting everything directly in front of their customers in a way that they previously weren't. We've gone from being an IT supporting function to being the face of the business in terms of application delivery and application support. So we know the world is moving faster. We know that application delivery is moving faster. We know that we're facing a huge number of challenges across organizations. And specifically when I talk to organizations around enterprise DevOps transformation, I guess I've been doing that for the last decade or so, what I really start looking at is how do we address challenges around alignment and visibility? How do we make sure we can measure across both the distributed, the cloud-based system, the hybrid systems, and the mainframe ecosystem? So today we're going to look at ways we can tie all of that together, which will help us increase velocity, which will help us reduce technical challenges of interacting between different teams, and will really help us get that level of visibility, control, and insight that we need to be successful with DevOps transformation. And again, talking about DevOps transformation, that doesn't mean we're throwing everything we've done over the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years out. It means we're taking slightly new approaches. In fact, we're actually going back to traditional approaches of source to load integrity. In reality, being able to track everything from a dev side to the operations side. The distributed world has had challenges for that for a long time. Addressing those challenges and aligning them with the mainframe challenges that we see. So, what do we want to do? We need to balance speed and control, driving faster innovation, being able to control everything we had. I would imagine that there's not a single person on the call today who doesn't have some sort of audit and compliance need for their business, being able to prove how their changes got to production. Just because we're going faster, just because we're transitioning to Agile, doesn't mean we don't still need to do that. So balancing speed with control, with visibility, with insight, and with orchestration and automation. Tying together a number of different groups, tools, systems, and technologies is really key for enterprise DevOps transformation, which leads us into distributed and mainframe control, planning, tracking, visibility across the board, being able to coordinate change across multiple teams, being able to get visibility into what's happening from an end-to-end perspective. So using something like release control to tie together cloud-based systems, distributed systems, hybrid systems, and mainframe systems, being able to track and trace a standard process across all of those systems, having full visibility into release, full audit and compliance, full runbook management support, being able to set a list of activities and tasks. That includes automation on the mainframe, so being able to, for example, not just perform approvals or promotions on the mainframe sites, being able to work on change packages, but also being able to do things like our DB2 binds and running remote execution or REX commands through the different tools and technologies. So I guess from an end-to-end perspective, what do we have? A solution that allows us to manage change packages in the same way that we would manage a pipeline from a distributed perspective. Maybe our distributed pipelines go dev into UAT pilot production. Our mainframe change packages are going dev, site 1, site 2, stage in production, tying those together in a logical way. That's what release control and ChangeMan working together will give us. So let's take a look at this in action. Let's see how we get into ChangeMan and release control working in conjunction with each other. So obviously what we would normally do if we wanted to interact with the mainframe is come in here and potentially do things like creating new packages and then promoting and approving packages, freezing packages. Obviously pretty straightforward for those of us who've lived and worked on the mainframe, but not necessarily the same for everyone else. Before we get into creation, freezing, promotion, backing out, reverting of packages, let's go back to release world. So what we can see in release control, and again this is a simple browser-based application. There's no other components that you need to worry about. It is all just on the distributed platform. It runs through a regular browser. In this case, as you can see, I'm running Firefox, but Edge, Chrome, any of the other popular browsers also work. In here I can see the concept of my release. I can see my release dashboard. I can see the usual click-through displays of what's happening. Again, for those of you who've used ChangeMan for quite a period of time, you've probably seen some of these capabilities in the past, either through TT for ZMF or some of the earlier versions of Application Release Manager ARM that we pushed out of the door, wow, over a decade or so back, or in the earlier instances of the release control system. But basically what we can start doing is tracking what we refer to as a release package. It's kind of similar to a ChangeMan package. I guess the big difference being that we can have a collection of ChangeMan packages in a release package. And the system is going to allow me to track all manner of different things. So where my packages are in their life cycles, ownership, failures or successes of my packages, overdue milestones for system planning. What else can we have? Open exit criteria, any active releases. Again, all of these reports are drilled through. So for example, if I wanted to see my overdue milestones on my Titanium release, I can just click in here and that'll take me through to the record itself. It'll allow me to see, yep, this is my development milestone for checking execution status. I can go all the way down into that milestone if I wanted to, and that's going to show me the full details of any approval rules that I have in place, the full history of the system, who's responsible for what, when this milestone was due. Apparently I'm a little bit in the past at this point in time, but maybe I'm slightly overdue with that particular release. What else can we see? So in addition to our simple release dashboards, let's get into the meat of the system. Of course, we have a timeline view that allows us to track releases in more of a project management kind of view. So if I scroll down in here, we can see, there's a mainframe user group demo release train. And that demo release train has a bunch of different capabilities against it. Remember what we were saying earlier on about this whole notion of being able to align distributed or cloud-based or mobile and mainframe releases together. Well, what we can see here in our demo release train is that we have an application called Clarius Online. Again, some of you guys will have heard of that one in the past. The Clarius Online system actually delivers 3 separate sets of components. It delivers mainframe components, it delivers cloud components, in this case using AWS and Azure to deliver components, and online distributed components. And in order for our release train to be successfully implemented, what we'll find is each of these components has to be delivered into the system. Again, if we take a look at this demo release train, we'll notice a couple of things on our Gantt chart straight away. We can see that we have planning phases and development phases, or construction phases, QA phases, and deployment phases. So in addition to these different phases, which of course you can customize as you'd like to your heart's content to call them something different, you'll also notice there's this thinner line that represents our actual dates, and you can see that earlier on we did some planning and our planning was actually completed pretty much on time. There's our milestone, it said planning complete, it popped up on screen, so we're able to track our planned versus our actual dates. Yeah, if we take a look at one of these components, we can see that our package that comprises, or that our distributed components is comprised of, has some components that get deployed. It has an integration into Jira that needs to happen to update a Jira ticket. Again, this Jira ticket doesn't have to be Jira. This could be a microfocus tool. It could be one of our existing SCCM systems, a Dimensions CM, for example, a Star Team, an AccuRev. It could be an ALM Quality Center or an ALM Octane. I'm just using Jira because a lot of our customers use Jira as ticketing tools.
We do a quality gate and a quality check, and our application component is going to be deployed. So we deploy, we update a ticket, and we validate everything's good. And in fact, all of these actions are automated. In fact, if I take another look at live, we can see that our component is going to go through a number of different stages. So our component is going to go from dev into QA and into production. In fact, more than that, what we can see is, oh, look at this, a little cheat here. I did a deployment on the 7th of October. That deployment ran for 14 minutes. In fact, if I click on the details, I can see the full information of everything around what happened. In fact, I can go all the way down into the level of granularity of the individual components and the individual steps that happened. And we'll come back to that later on as we start transitioning this to our mainframe view. But really what happened was I did my deployment, it ran for 14 minutes, it failed. In fact, it failed because I made a mistake when I was setting up my system. So I went back through my process. I went to the end of my process run. You can see I went back into dev, and I re-executed my development process. And where that's got me to now is I'm ready to go into my QA environment. So that's all well and good for distributed. In fact, being as I'm in here, I'm going to click that Start Deployment button just to show you what will happen on the distributed side before we get back into the mainframe. So our task validation has finished. What does that mean? That list of tasks, that runbook of actions that are going to happen, they've all completed, and everything seemed to have been successful. So the execution of this package is now going to start. And when I say the execution of this package, obviously what I can see is my deployment into my QA environment is currently in progress. If I look at my list of actions and activities, I can actually see my deployment using my automation tool is in progress. That'll then trigger my update to my Jira ticket, which will then in turn go to my quality check. Again, we'll come back to this in a little bit. So what have we seen so far? Well, we've seen that we have a release dashboard. Cool. We've seen that we have the ability to define a timeline-based set of release trains. That our release trains, and let me click into one of these, our release trains can have a number of different levels of content. That different content could be mainframe, it could be distributed, it could be cloud-based, it could be hybrid, basically any kind of system, it could be mobile systems. And we've seen that we can track each of these different components as they go through the deployment phases or the delivery path to get them to production. So what? So what does that mean to us from a mainframe perspective, and how does that tie into the ISPF screen and ChangeMan that I was in earlier on? Well, when I'm going into my mainframe component, let's take this package that I've got, this release package in my world, that's standing here as part of my release train, and let's work against that. I'll come in here, I can see that my ChangeMan freeze operation is currently underway. I can see my deployment process. When I click my Start Deploy, my validation completes. That'll start showing me that, yep, I'm validating that everything's going to work successfully. So we actually do preemptive validation. Again, if I had something in there, let's say, for example, my ChangeMan package was already frozen at this point, or I couldn't promote it for some reason, or I'd used the same package across multiple releases, and someone had already proved it, we'd be doing the validation against that. A couple of things that I didn't talk about, and I said I was going to, we can also inject variables on query variables as part of the process and the operation that's going to happen. So we can start injecting processes. In fact, what do we see here? Package must be audited. Notice what it does straight away. It fails my development process. It fails my freeze of my ARM package. Why? Because I didn't do an audit first. And of course, what I would then do, I'd say, there's my error. I didn't audit my package. So, because I didn't audit my package, I can't freeze my package. And because I can't freeze my package, the rest of my runbook can't execute. What else does that mean? That means that as I go through, I can say my deployment fails. This is starting to feel quite familiar for me. I failed another deployment. But it's allowed me to show you another set of capabilities in the product handily enough. In addition to having deployment tasks that run, need to audit. there's some really cool capabilities that the system provides, and specifically for ChangeMan users. So, as part of my process, I can be running tasks to deploy my system, but of course, it's not always the case that deployments are successful. I wish that were the case, but sadly not. In addition to deployment tasks, we can run what we refer to as failure tasks. Now, those failure tasks will allow me to do all manner of other things. So, for example, my failure task could be set up to do something pretty interesting. I could come in and I could have my failure task running against all manner of different things. So I could undo database deployment information. I could undo my application change, and I could undo my application deployment. Or I could maybe go in here and I could do a ChangeMan action, for example, to revert a package. And again, there are a bunch of other things. So I could revert my package, for example. I could back out my package. You'll notice there's a lot of different capabilities in here. I can reject my package if something fails. But yeah, I could back out this particular package if it fails. And I can then say, yeah, use one of these packages in the event of failure. Again, what we'll see in here is it's the same list that we saw before. I can pick my application. I can choose, in fact, I'm going to use some dev packages, and I'm going to do my filter. And this is going to go off and run my query against my mainframe to find my list of packages and allow me to pick the one that I want to use. But again, reverting packages, backing out packages, we can build the full configuration. So, and again, that's the same as if we're doing a partial promote, as if we're doing a full promote. We can revert the partial promotion, and we can revert the partial information. So maybe I want to actually back out change package number 1. So my failure task would then roll that one back. All I need to do is back out this package. And again, I hear you asking the question, what about ERO? Well, yeah, it also supports the enterprise release option as well. So if you're using ARO, you can do exactly the same set of capabilities that we're seeing in here. You can do a baseline ripple, for example. You can do a number of different steps. So failure tasks in addition to deployment tasks. Again, from my deployment task perspective, what am I going to do? I'm going to add one more step. Maybe I want to do an audit. So in here, I might want to do an audit of my package. Come up, there we go. And what package do I want to do my audit of? Well, it's one that's already linked to my system. Happens to be number 341. That one's etched into my brain at this point. And we can save that. I can say audit package. And I can say I'm going to do my order of my package in dev. Again, if we untick these environments, it means it's only going to run against the one environment. So I'm only going to do my audit of my package in dev rather than QA and production. And what do we get to? We get a new task added to my system. Well, I don't want it down there. I want it to run all the way up there at the top. So I drag and drop. I get my audit package first. That was how we would do something, for example, if I drop my update Jira item and my database bind together. There we go. They'll both now happen as step number 5. So we're going to run these 2 steps in parallel, which is kind of interesting. So audit, freeze, approve, promote, do my bind, update my ticket, maybe do a freeze of another package. Obviously that one's probably going to fail as well because it doesn't have an audit step beforehand. Probably something that we would want to add to our runbook or our list of tasks and actions and activities. But of course, all that's going to happen behind the scenes as we execute this process is our system on the mainframe side is going to be updated, everything is going to run successfully, and our demonstration will have been perfectly successful. Isn't that great? So let's click deliver. And finally, let's just go ahead and click start deployment. And what we'll see is we can track and trace everything. Now, of course, the benefit of doing everything from this system, because we're spanning mainframe, distributed, cloud-based systems, hybrid systems, all actions, activities, all runbook steps are in one place. Everything that we've done so far has a full history report against it. We can see every single step along the way. We can see every step of our deployment. We can see who did which activity, when they did it, and how they did it. We can see the success or failure. We could see that this failed because we didn't have an audit step at the beginning. We can see the full list of everything that happens, every association, every removal. So you get a completely audit compliant route from dev to production. So that whole DevOps piece of going faster, well, that's great, as long as you have the audit compliance that you need. And of course, this release control system is going to allow us to do that. In parallel to that, we've got all of our automation running on the back end. You'll notice I said that bit about the DB2 bind. Well, in parallel to our release control piece, we actually have our deployment automation technology sitting out there running as an agent on the mainframe. And what does that mean? It means that all the power of deployment automation that we've previously had in the distributed or the hybrid or the cloud-based environments applies on the mainframe now as well. We can run remote execution, we can do whatever we want to happen to do as part of our process, again, that DB2 bind, but we could be running Rex, we could be doing any kind of interaction with the system. And that's going to allow me to, again, track not just my ChangeMan deployments, but other system deployments. For example, if we wanted to run components from, for example, Endeavor or ISPW running, then yeah, we can go off and we can execute those through our deployment automation tool. And of course, we can see that our audit package is pending. It's going to start executing, and of course, we'll get our audit done. And once our audit comes back and everything is cool, we'll then move on to the next steps of freezing and approval and promotion. What else do we have? We have a full calendar of activity. We have calendars for our packages. We have calendars for our environments. That allows me to see what is planned to be deployed into an environment at a specific time. Let's think about that in a different way. In fact, I may have some data in the system somewhere. Rather than looking at what's planned to be deployed into a system on a specific date and time, we can look at that from the other angle, and we can start saying, hey, I want to schedule blackouts, I want to schedule change freezes. In this case, you can see earlier in the year we had some system maintenance and change freezes. These correlate to our sites on the mainframe. So if we have a site that's going to be unavailable for use, or if we're doing user acceptance testing on a specific site, we want to prevent promotions into that site from the system over here, because we're doing a lot of combined mainframe or distributed mainframe testing. We can do all of that from our calendaring approach as well. And finally, of course, we can track reports. We can create any reports that we want. We have our release calendaring, our release activity. But if that's not enough for us, we can start creating our own reports using our report generator. So by coming into the system and saying, hey, I want to create a new report, what we can do, well, we can actually go off and we can say, I want to report just on the SLAs for my mainframe systems, or just the SLAs for my release and deployment systems. Whew. Loads of information, loads of data, loads of insight into what's happening, information spanning distributed platforms, mainframe platforms, all working together, updates to our mainframe system, creation of packages dynamically. We can see that we passed the audit. Look at that, it's kind of cool. So our ChangeMan package passed the audit in the system, and that will have then triggered our rest of our process in release control and onto deployment automation. That's it for me.